But yeah, I think a good place to just start off is Stephanie. Why don't you give us the kind of founder story, where the idea came from, what got you so passionate about the problem?
Yeah, totally. Happy to. And thank you all for having me and accommodating the schedule and the time difference. I appreciate it. So, my name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I'm the Queen of Raw. For those who don't know, we are a global marketplace and software tools for businesses, small to large, to be able to buy and sell their unused textiles. That fabric on rolls that traditionally sits in warehouses collecting dust or gets burned or sent to landfill. We give them a global marketplace to sell it, make money, turn what would be pollution into profit. And then over time, we give them a lot of cool data and tools with machine learning and blockchain, which we can chat about in order to help them minimize that waste and inefficiency going forward. So we're, very crazy idea. And where did I get this from? My founder story actually begins 100 years before I was born. In 1896, my great grandfather came over in a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island and he settled into the Lower East Side of New York. And that was the original garment district. And he was an immigrant chasing the American dream. So he had to make a living for his family. So what did he do? He would find materials and supplies nearby, old fabrics and furs and things immigrants had brought over on the ships with them, but they weren't using anymore. And he would repurpose them by hand with minimal waste and minimal toxins because his bottom dollar depended on it. And he sold these finished goods to local customers. And it was an incredibly profitable, successful business. Many of his kind of fur coats I still wear today, 100 years later. And I grew up around him. I was very close to him, and he lived to a beautiful age of 105. And I would hear these stories of the old school ways of doing business. And of course, he didn't talk about it as sustainability or circular economy. But at the end of the day, that's very much what it was. It made sense for people, made sense for planet, and it certainly made sense for his business's profit. Now, of course, for anyone who does business these days, we all know today's supply chains are a little more complicated than my great grandfather's day, right? Hundreds of steps across the globe, metric tons of water, chemicals, crops, and oil are used in the process. But our vision with Queen of Raw is, how can we use technology to get back to the way my great grandfather did business, which made sense for people, made sense for planet, and it certainly made sense for his profit. So I didn't start right in this world as an entrepreneur. I did go to an all women's school growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, a New York suburb. And they really empowered us to want to go build things and change the world and find our voice and work on our public speaking skills and be entrepreneurs from an early age. So it was definitely a part of me from early on and growing up. But I, as time went on, ended up on Wall Street as a corporate attorney. So didn't do the family route. Wanted to go build big businesses, merge them, acquire them, help people get jobs, grow them, take them public. It was a really exciting time at the time to be on Wall Street, and ended up specializing in fashion, technology, and sustainability. So I guess at the end of the day, no matter what you do, you end up at your roots and getting back to who you are and your core. And like I said, I kind of always knew eventually I'd go out and build my own business and want to change the world. So when the market crashed in '08 and '09, it's very similar, obviously, in some ways to what's going on in the world today. It was on Wall Street, this period of just waste and greed and excess and darkness. And I kind of looked at that as my opportunity. And I said, with everything going on, if I don't do it when, if not now, when, let me go out, let me start my own business, look at a world problem and go change the world and find the light and the opportunity in all this darkness. And so I do encourage anyone who's looking at the world right now and while you're in school learning and looking at problems you want to solve that are out there, don't doubt that you can't go out there and solve them. You are a critical piece to how and why it is going to happen. But so that for me was in '08 and '09. And I started my career path as an entrepreneur and never looked back. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't start Queen of Raw right off the bat. I didn't know that was the problem I was going to tackle. It kind of found me. My first startup, which is what I went into right after leaving Wall Street, was a textile manufacturing company. My friend had invented a new leather alternative, and it hit a note in the market and started doing really well when sustainability was just getting talked about years ago. And so we kind of went with it and we started growing the business. And I was really proud of what we were doing. We were putting out a new alternative to leather. It's sustainable, it's good for the environment, but we were still manufacturing something new. And I would go to all these factories and mills and warehouses around the world, and I'd see all this perfectly good stuff just sitting there in warehouses collecting dust or going to get burned or sent to landfill. All this fabric on rolls in perfect condition that just wasn't getting used and was going to be burned or landfilled. And it didn't make sense to me. It doesn't make economic sense for a business to have all this waste. And it certainly damages people and planet. So, why are we allowing this to go on? And so as I dug deeper and deeper into the problem, I started learning some pretty powerful things about it. A lot of cool businesses, many of which you are familiar with, maybe ThreadUp, Poshmark, Depop, The Real, StockX, right? They were doing really cool stuff around finished goods, keeping that stuff in circulation, right? And not being burned and landfilled. But nobody was paying attention to this problem up the chain of all of these raw material waste that goes into making those goods. And I thought, okay, if we can solve this part of the problem and figure out why they got this waste, help them sell it, but also help them have less waste going forward, maybe we'll have less waste down the chain and with finished goods. And so, that obviously was the impetus behind building what we did. As like any good founder, you start with, the problem that clearly for us was textile waste. You got to quantify the problem. When we quantified it, it actually comes to $120 billion with a B worth of unused fabric that gets wasted every single year. So huge number, huge opportunity that we needed to tackle. But then the question becomes, okay, there's the problem. And it was bad for economics, obviously, bad for people to have all this waste. It's also really bad for the planet and for labor practices, right? All that waste. I won't go too much into the statistics, but just if people don't know, the textile industry is the number 2 polluter in the world of clean water globally. And it sits behind oil and agriculture, which is number 1. And textiles use oil and agriculture in what, so it also contributes to the number 1 polluter. So long and short of it is textiles really damaging. The one statistic that I used, in addition to the fact that this was a big market, $120 billion a year, opportunity, I also looked at one important statistic, and that's why is the time now for your solution, right? And what we found out when we dug deeper into the sustainable impact of textiles, we learned that if we continue at the current pace of textile production, by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals from textile production alone. So we weren't talking about a problem that's going to affect people 100 years from now. We're not talking about a problem that's going to affect people from 10 years from now. It's literally happening today and on our shores. And I think that brings a sense of urgency that we, really brings it front and center. It's economically painful for businesses to have this problem, and it's also an environmental urgency to solve. And so with those two together, we realized, okay, now we got to build a solution. What does the solution look like? And when I saw all this stuff sitting in warehouses, I thought that we should start with a marketplace, right? Get all that stuff from the warehouse onto the web and into buyers' hands across the globe. And that, like I'm sure if by building marketplaces and doing it in the digital space, you can just find a whole world of data and opportunities and business opportunities for what you're building. So we got a marketplace up and running in 2018 to match the buyers and sellers of all of this waste. And it just started taking off from there. We had huge demand. But our challenge, unlike a lot of marketplaces, our challenge was in the supply. The supply was out there, but we didn't know how to get it quickly and easily into our marketplace. And that's where we now have grown in our business, and we can chat more about it, but we've grown in our business in order to support our large enterprise customers and help them do more faster. And we built these software and tools so that now we can actually find the waste in a business's inventory system, put it in Queen of Raws marketplace, and then over time start to track all the water, the toxins, the energy, and the dollars saved by the actions they take. And obviously that gives them more incentives to do better going forward. So, to date, we've saved over 1 billion gallons of water, and we're just getting started. That's actually enough clean water for 1.4 million people around the world to drink for 3 years. And I say that not just because we're really proud of it, but because, like we kind of started this conversation with, never doubt that the small actions you take don't have a huge impact on the world and can make a big, big difference. So that's where we are. Definitely excited to chat, hear any more about what you're all building, how you're thinking about things. Certainly can dive deeper into the fun stuff, the blockchain, the machine learning, and all the data tracking of what we're doing. But yeah, excited to be joining.
Yeah, that's awesome, Stephanie. It was great to hear your story, and you gave a ton of detail there, which was really awesome to hear. And it's cool to hear that your company is not just in textiles and sustainability, but there's also a whole set of software tools that come along with it.
Yeah.
I think one question I had was, it seems like a lot of your company is built around your brand and kind of the mission of what you guys stand for and what you guys want to achieve. So I'm just curious, kind of, how did you cultivate that brand to capture both like investors and customers? Because I think there's different kind of needs on both ends.
That is an awesome question. Learning how to communicate what you're doing definitely takes time and practice and training. I've had formal and informal training and have spent years working on how I convey what I do. The first thing we did as an entrepreneur, right, when we saw this problem, we had to talk to people to figure out if this was a pain point for them and why nobody had done anything like this before, and whether the solution we were thinking about was going to be the right solution for them. And so we did a lot of our homework. We got a website up. I didn't even have any product to sell. Maybe like 10 textiles in our platform from my first company, right? Like that's all we had. But we got a brand. We had a cool name. We called ourselves Queen of Raw. We wanted to stand out and be remembered and recognized. And hopefully it's a name you'll never forget. But we started telling the story of this waste in textiles, which a lot of people didn't know, of the damaging it is doing to people and planet and also to businesses' profit. And then we started, we're fortunate to be based, our team in New York City near the garment district. We started talking to enterprise customers and to brands and retailers and to understand, why do you have all this waste? And I see actually a question that Lane posted, are textiles not made to order and produced only when purchased? That's a great question. We went and asked these brands and retailers, right? Why do you have this waste? Or why do you think you have? Aren't you making them when you're preparing your collections? To be honest, fashion produces, at least the old school way of doing things, years in advance. They are forecasting and predicting what consumer demand is going to be and starting to order textiles and create designs and move it down the funnel. But that shirt that you're wearing, that was actually designed sometimes a year plus ago. And so in all that time, things change, right? Inventory system amounts change, consumer demand changes, color preferences, styles, fiber content, all that changes. And then they're left with all this waste. And so that's just one of many reasons why, but there's all of this waste. And so we started talking deeper to understand why they had it and whether they would take advantage of this marketplace. But how we communicated it has definitely changed over time. We had a lot of fun, like I said, with the name and the storytelling, but we would, when we were communicating it first, we were talking about the people and the planet and save the people and save the planet and solve the world's water crisis and climate crisis. And don't get me wrong, that is still very near and dear to who we are and what we do today. But when you're talking to a big enterprise, multi-billion-dollar brand or retailer, that's a nice to have, not a have to have, or at least back then it wasn't. They would listen to us, say, okay, talk to our sustainability department. And just then they were starting to have sustainability departments. So go talk to them and see this if you want to do a little project together. But the more we got into this and we realized how much waste there was and how much it was costing them, we realized that for some of our enterprise customers, it was eating up 15% of their bottom line. And it was hurting their top line because consumers didn't like seeing all this waste. And millennials and Gen Zs said, you're not a good actor. And so it was hurting these businesses. And when we started with that and we led with that, Then we got the ears of the big companies. That is how we got adoption from the big brands and retailers. And that's also how we got adoption from investors. Because then you see this isn't just about people and planet, although that's very important. There is an economic business model to this that makes it make sense for everybody to participate. And so I think turning it from not just an environmental problem, but realizing this is a CFO issue, that was a big change in our story that we learned early on that really had a big impact on how we communicated these things. And of course, depending upon the audience, we talk about it differently. Then we learned, so, okay, we went out there and we learned how to tell the story to get more customer adoption, and we had to get into fundraising mode. And when you're talking about as a woman in business, right, in textiles and fashion and supply chain, I mean, and sustainability and waste, I mean, right? Investors' heads could explode. They don't know what you're talking about, right? This was definitely outside of what the traditional investors had seen. So I had to come up with a way to get them to realize just how freaking big this was. And so through a variety of opportunities, and I take advantage of every competition that's out there, and I think you all should too. When you have ideas, it's free money, it's press, it's celebrities. Get out there and apply to all these competitions. I've applied to a ton of them. We've been fortunate to win a bunch, but the one that stood out the most as a game changer in how we communicate things and the attention we got, I was given 60 seconds on a huge stage to pitch Ashton Kutcher, Gary Vee, and P. Diddy. And 60 seconds. So getting a 10-minute pitch, that's, hard enough. I mean, 7-minute pitch, okay, that's tough. 4-minute pitch, that's tough too. 60 seconds. And it was big money and investment behind it. And so I tell you, that was the hardest thing I've ever done as an entrepreneur. I can tell you it was one of the single most valuable things I have ever done. I had to figure out how to get Ashton and everybody to care, to understand, to realize how big this was in 60 seconds. So, I won't play the video now. You can Google it separately and see it's out there, but we won. We did it. And we were able to figure out at the heart of it how to communicate this story. And so we took that kind of impetus and excitement and fun and ran with it, and now have been able to close obviously more dollars and are continuing to fundraise. And so I think getting your pitch into 60 seconds, iterating on your story and making people care is really, really powerful and matters. And that was definitely a learning for us. And now as we're going into the next fundraise, every raise, you have a little bit more metrics and more support behind you. The third thing I will mention that was important for us as a business to get street cred, not just the investment, that's just a piece of it, not just the customers, that's a piece of it, but we actually had to be able to back up what we were talking about. Like, we're talking about saving the planet and all this water and toxins and energy that can be saved, but I had to be able to show the data. And so we spent a lot of time, MIT actually invested in our company. We spent a lot of time with MIT and the United Nations diving deep into how we measure success, ROI, and the sustainability metrics on our platform so that we can show our customers the value, and we as a business can communicate to investors, to the public at large, and to everyone, and stand behind what we do. So, those are just some learnings in how we talk about things and how we communicate them to different parties and different people. I see happy to take another question, or I see one also teed up in the chat can go into.
Yeah, Maddie, why don't you go ahead and ask?
Yeah, my question is basically just what's your plan of growth moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like any, business, you're gonna see a problem and think what you have the solution for, right? And I think of our marketplace model for anyone who may not get it also, like Uber and Airbnb, right? Uber is taking unused cars, Airbnb is taking unused apartments and houses, and it's waste. It's stuff that's not being used, and it's putting it back into this chain of supply and demand using technology, right? An underutilized asset, and creating value and money out of it. And that's virtually what we're doing with Queen of Rose Marketplace, right? Underutilized, not valued textile. And by putting it into the chain of supply and demand in our marketplace, it gets real value and real dollars for it. But that's just the beginning. Look at Uber as well, right? Did Uber know it was going to get into Uber Eats and other market opportunities? Those are the shadow markets. By bringing this community together in the digital space, all of these new markets and opportunities open up. that you never thought of before. So I've got what my growth plan is going forward, and I'm going to share it now. But at the same time, I'm really excited by bringing, now we have over 250,000 users across the globe. We're on every continent and growing. And I'm excited to see some of the markets and opportunities that I haven't thought of yet, that the team and I uncover and our customers uncover. Everything we've built to date has been based on the feedback we've gotten from customers and what they need and want so we can support them better. So, right now, our ultimate vision and our big dream, a couple things. One is obviously we see this like an Alibaba or an Amazon done right. Better trust, transparency, sustainability, right? Track and trace, quality, curation. So, ultimately, obviously, that's part of the vision that drives us. But that's just one piece of the business. Textiles and fashion, it's just kind of a drop in the bucket for us right now and just the beginning. Because if you think of it, textiles are also used in automotive, in aviation, computer electronics. It's not just your clothing, it's the material on your chair right now, the carpet under your feet, the interior of your cars, right? Your computer cases, it's everywhere. So exploring those other industries is a big part of our growth. And then looking at those other industries and figuring out, what the hell do you have in waste that's valuable? And that we can create a market for it and tools to minimize it going forward. And so that's all kind of part of our growth strategy. That being said, we've got our 5 to 10 year plan, but like any good business, right? Very focused on the next 12 to 18 months and continuing to grow from there. But a good question. You always got to have that big, bold vision and how you get there and how it changes. That's the exciting part.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to dive deeper. And Lane, I see a
Lane?
question. What's up?
Hi, Stephanie.
Hey.
I'm sure you read it in the chat. I was just curious as to how Queen of Raw implemented processes to kind of streamline the listing process. Do you guys list everything that is surplus that the manufacturers produce, or are you guys selective?
That is an awesome question. So we get inquiries every single day from people all over the world to participate in our platform. I'll give you a bit of a controversial answer. To start right now, we are a managed, curated marketplace. So not just anyone and everyone can participate. We did that because we are global, but we're not physically touching the goods. So I need to have some controls, to your point, and processes in place to be able to authenticate and verify what we're selling and stand behind our brand and our platform. Now, in the future, don't get me wrong, that may change as we can build more processes and more international networks and more people on the ground in other parts of the world. But for right now, we are a managed marketplace. But we can't do everything manually by hand. Now we've gotten to the point, right? In the beginning, of course, we were doing stuff manually by hand. We got an MVP marketplace up and, I loved it where like I'd be doing the product listings and someone call it, say, oh yes, shipping department. And then, right, like someone else calls with a customer inquiry and I say, how can I help you today? And so we did it all, right, early on. But you're right. In order to grow and scale, you have to have automation and processes in place or you never will grow. And the way we've been growing kind of through COVID, when I'm sure you can imagine there's more waste than ever. And despite what you may be thinking about fashion and retail, the sales of things like shirts are up, even though pants are down. Thank you, Zoom. So fashion is not going away unless we're all going to be naked. It is just changing in how it's made and what it's made of and how we consume it. But our business has been booming. We've grown 123% quarter over quarter and beyond without spending a penny more in our marketing and we don't spend in PR or advertising. So definitely, we're seeing this growth, but we need processes in place. So that's where technology obviously plays a big part because we started with whatever was kind of open source in a marketplace and got it up and running, but we started dialing into where are the holes and the challenges. And you're 100% right. The supply side was the challenge. How do you know what this stuff is made of, where it comes from, where it's going to go to, how, and who's manually going to put photographs and descriptions in. So that's where now over time, we have partnerships with big companies like SAP, where we can actually integrate directly into a business's inventory system and pull all their data into Queen of Raw. And then our engine starts to clean up the data and then start selling. We can also upload CSV files, right? And clean the data, figure out any errors or inconsistencies. And we use blockchain, for anyone who's familiar with it, in order to provide integrity to the data. And all it means is we've got a story, a track and trace tool. So we know who said what when, who said what that product is made of, when it was made, where it came from, and where it goes to. And that's part of how we protect ourselves and build out the authenticity and integrity to the data going forward. But you're right. These are challenges, and I'm cool that you're thinking about that, because that's a big part of growing a business is what do you need to do manually and what can you automate to scale and leverage technology tools to do.
Fascinating answer. Thank you. Was there a
Yeah.
specific point in time where you were like, holy crap, this can't be a manual process anymore?
2 points. One, you named it. When I started saying every day, holy crap, we can't keep up with this manually anymore. That was one point, when you literally don't have the hours in the day to be updating and upgrade, then you know. And the other way is when your customers are asking for it. And our large enterprise brands would come to us and say, look, we're one of the biggest brands in the world, without mentioning names. We want to participate, but the time and resources it takes us to upload, we just can't do it. And we heard it time and time again. And, rule of thumb, you hear it 10 times or more from a customer, it's time to start thinking about it. And so we would hear it again and again. And we said, okay, we got to do something about this. And that's when we started looking at what the solution would look like, building the software. And now, in addition to the marketplace, you see queenofraw.com, we have 100% proprietary enterprise software that we've built that lives behind Queen of Raw. And that's what we sell to large enterprise customers that does just that. It automates these processes for them. But what's really cool about that is, now that we had all this data and information, in addition to just selling the textiles and making the money selling this waste, there's so much more we could do with that dark data that nobody ever else had before. Now that we know about this, we can figure out, why do you have it? And how can you minimize it intelligently going forward? And that's where all of this machine learning and AI tools come in, and we can start to help them do better as a business and become even more valuable to them. And a lot of cool products that we've built now within the software based on what they want and need. And then it really becomes fun.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, of course. You betcha. Any other
Yeah,
questions out there?
That's so awesome to hear. I'm curious, why do you think your company was able to be successful? Like, why haven't any other companies been able to do this?
So that's another question we ask ourselves all the time, right? Like, why you ask yourself, why has nobody else done this? And to be totally fair, there are competitors out there. Like any business, we'd be silly to say we don't have competitors. Of course we do. But why has nobody done it the way we have? I think a couple things. One is, when we looked at this industry, kind of like what's going on right now with TikTok enabling anyone to be a creator, right? And Roblox enabling anyone to be a gamer and a technologist and a creator. We kind of looked at the marketplace and saw this as an opportunity for anyone to be a designer and a maker and get access to resources that they otherwise wouldn't have. But when you look deeper at the problem, it's such a fractured landscape. Textiles were sitting all over in warehouses all over the world. So to figure out how to bring it together, this community in the digital space, do it globally, and to what we were just talking about, automate all of these processes. If I tell you, some of these businesses are still doing things the way my great-grandfather did business in 1896. Literally, I will not mention their name, but one of the multi-billion-dollar fashion brands was still ordering fabrics by pen and paper and managing their entire supply chain on Excel spreadsheet. And when you do that, right, it's a real challenge. So nobody was doing it because it wasn't anything that they wanted to pay attention to. It was too fractured, too big of a problem, and they were doing okay, right? Businesses were just making more faster, fast fashion was booming, and the world was great. Well, fast forward to COVID, right? And supply chains have broken down. You see now when your Amazon order doesn't come on time, right? That supply chains have broken down a bit. And I think that offered my business an opportunity where, for some enterprise customers where this wasn't top of mind, which is why they never did it or bothered with it before, now it became a top priority for all the C-suites, right? In all the big brands and retailers. And that was an opportunity for us then to come in, because we had been, leaders internationally in this space. We built the street cred, and now we could come in and start offering them the solution. So we had a little bit of fortune with luck and timing, despite what's going on in the world. It actually offered an opportunity for us as a business, and also because people now care, right? Sustainability is such a hot topic because of that. Whereas before, it was a nice to have, not a have to have. Now it's about surviving today and thriving tomorrow, and this is how they do it. So, all those factors kind of come into play. And Madison, I see another cool question.
Yes. My other question is, if you could give your college self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Whew, that's a good one. And I think a lot about kind of my journey and advice I would give and things I would do. A couple things. One is tell yourself, obviously, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to get your ideas out there, start iterating in the market and, learning from your community and your customers. And the other thing is don't be afraid. This is something no one tells you. Don't be afraid to grow into a crowded market space because obviously, you just asked why no one done this before. It's a very and I explained to you. At the same time, there are things like fabric.com, which is owned by Amazon, and Alibaba, right? Which are world big multi-billion dollar marketplaces for materials. And so in theory, someone could have listed all of this waste and dead stock there, but they didn't because it wasn't being done right. And so, don't be afraid to go into what may appear to be a crowded marketplace, but with a new innovative solution and way of thinking about it, because you can learn from the mistakes of those who came before you. I looked at what Amazon and Alibaba are doing wrong. And look, we all know, right? The challenges that Amazon and Alibaba are having around quality, trust, curation, sustainability. And so there's an opportunity, right, to be a new entrant, but be the last player in the market to really dominate by learning from their mistakes. And then maybe they acquire you in the future. So, those are two things to think about. The other thing I continue to do, and I highly recommend, we kind of touched on a little bit, but is have fun with and do some public speaking. Because if it comes naturally to you, that's great. And if it doesn't, just practice, because a terrible idea articulated well can be like 90% of winning someone over, hopefully. And I'm sure you all have amazing ideas, and that's the final 10% kicker, but you got to be able to articulate. And that's something I've practiced and trained, and I'm continuing to want to improve on, because it does make a difference. And especially as a woman in business, and for you as a woman in business, right? There are differences in how our language and our communication is perceived. And so it's helpful if you can overcome some of those barriers and obstacles in advance.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Stephanie, I've got one more question for you.
Awesome. Okay. Right on.
I was curious as to if you thought the fact that Queen of Raw is essentially kind of a secondhand store / marketplace, do you feel like that comes at your detriment as a business, or do you think it makes customers more enticed to buy?
That's an awesome question. And I'm going to take it in a few different ways too. The idea that there is this much waste out there, but now sellers have a market to sell, right? And make money on their waste. I get that question from investors a lot, is aren't you incentivizing bad actors because they know they got a place to dump it, right? What's interesting is with our data and our software, we can actually track in real time and over time if someone is increasing or decreasing in the amount and type of waste that they are producing. So we can start to see behaviors and improvements. But don't get me wrong, waste is expensive and it's not a good business practice. It costs these businesses money and it's inefficient, and it's bad business. And so once they know about it, I can tell you very rarely do we see people continuing to increase in waste, because they need to, and we give them the tools to improve. And on the flip side, for buyers, it's a good question, right? Like what I guess how you're reading it is, buyers come to this secondhand place and they can get access to these materials, right, that they couldn't get access to before. They get it at a discount. They can find it locally sourced, right, available where they need it, and not ship all over the world. But they're still purchasing skins and synthetics on my platform, right? I've got leather, I've got synthetic and plastics, I've got that. And I'm the first to admit it. And I do get criticized in some sustainability communities that I love to debate with on stage about doing that. But for me, as a business, I drew my line in the sand of where I think I can measure an impact, and there's a positive by keeping this stuff in circulation, as opposed to that person who you bought it going out and making new. Now, ultimately, I agree with you. I hope we can phase out some of these bad practices. And I hope eventually we don't have these plastic-based, right, textiles. We're actually part of a huge competition now that we've put out a call to action. So if anyone is in the microfiber plastic pollution space, check out the Microfiber Challenge. We put $650,000 behind the challenge with our community and looking for solutions to the microfiber and plastic problem. But and that's what we want to do, right? Taking some of the money we earn, we have a non-for-profit arm that we pledge a portion of our proceeds, and we want to put it into challenges as well to solve those problems so that, yeah, you're right. Ultimately, there is no more need for a marketplace because we've solved all these supply chains. They run efficiently and they don't have plastic or waste or unsustainable materials. So you're right. I mean, that's an ultimate goal. We got a hell of a long way to get there, but it is an ultimate goal. For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and cool that you're thinking that way. The kind of questions that you all are asking obviously speaks volumes about where you are and how you're thinking about things. I could definitely tell you, although it's at my core and who I am, it wasn't so out there communicated when I was in college. I went to UPenn undergrad and Emory Law, and the fact that you have this kind of a mindset. When I originally talked about sustainability and what I was doing, people are like, what? What are you doing? Well, now, fortunately, today people get it. But so kudos to all of you for thinking that way, for sure. Forward thinking. Anyone else got a question?
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, hi, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. I sadly had to miss the first 20 minutes of this meeting, so I didn't hear the founding story and all that stuff. So excuse me if I'm being repetitive, but you think of like, you think of this big problem that you want to solve, right? You're like, oh, there's waste, like sustainability, all this stuff. Like I want to tackle it. And you got the idea and you're like, I can be doing this thing and be really helping the world. How did you go from like, cause you have this big idea and then, but you have to like start small, you got to start somewhere. How do you just like mentally just process and allow yourself to, start small and like choose what fabrics to go with first? And
oh man, that's a great question, because you're right. You've got this huge, bold vision and this huge problem, and you want to build this huge solution, but where do you go? What do you do on day one? And how do you not get stuck in the mud? You're right. And interestingly enough, the business model for Queen of Raw that I originally thought of, it was a marketplace, but it was going to operate a little bit differently than the way our marketplace does today. And I only learned how we should be doing it, or how we're doing it now, by getting feedback and communicating with customers. So the first thing I did was, I knew I wanted to get some customer feedback. I had this idea. And so we went out there and we started talking to prospective customers and understanding who it resonated with and why. And we talked to a couple big brands and retailers early on, a bunch of them. Some got it, some said no, they weren't interested right now, wasn't top of mind. Some didn't answer, right? So you get the information you can get, but we still knew, and we were determined with all the no's that there was something huge here. And so I took the position, and not everybody does this, but I said, we got to get a website up. We need a kick-ass brand and name and storytelling. And let's just start being thought leaders and communicating in this space, because if I can build the following and build the masses, then the big companies and the big dollars are going to come. So we got a website up very quickly. I went with my first name, Queen of Raw, which, we got a lot of pushback, by the way, for the name. You got to stick with your gut and go with, if you think something's going to serve you well. For us, this was the name that resonated. We stuck with it and it served us very well. But we got a cool name, right? Cool brand, look and feel. And we just started storytelling and talking, communicating about the problem, educating people about what was going on, how much money it was costing them, how much damage to people and planet it was doing, and just started building the street cred. And with our marketplace, we kept everything open. No subscription fees, no joining fees, no listing fees. We just started dribbling in product and looked at what happened. And I'll tell you, demand went bananas. We have to date not spent in PR marketing or advertising. And the demand has just gone crazy with people searching all over on our site. And so we said, okay, there's something here. The story is resonating, the brand is resonating, and people want these materials. So now I got to go out and find the supply. And that's kind of what led into the next phase of the business. But I knew there was something there at the heart when the story resonated and when I started seeing the buyer demand and the community come together. And the best thing you can do as a business, you can build the coolest, most kick-ass technology. I can make the coolest shit in the world. Any of us can. You can too. But it has to resonate with your community and it has to serve them. And so we focus on building the community first, and it has served us very well. Cool. Yeah. Sorry. In the interest of time, I see another question too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you betcha.
Hi, Stephanie. I was just wondering, for the initial website, did you have a founding team that you brought together, or did you contract it out to developers?
So in the original impetus of the website, we knew that we wanted to have some controls in place, right? We talked a little bit earlier about leveraging open source, but dialing in on what you need to dial in on to make it work for you and your business. And so I knew that if this was going to be a global marketplace and in the digital space, and technology was delivering the solution, that I needed a technical co-founder. I did not come from a technology background. As a lawyer, I represented obviously some tech companies, but that was it. So I went to General Assembly in New York, which if anyone doesn't know about it, it's a really cool hub for technology folk who innovate in different ways of thinking. It has technology at schools, it has accelerators and programs, it's got a working space, and they have a job board there. And I went through and started looking at these job postings. And one of them really resonated with me. I still have a copy of it. And so we went to and so I contacted him. We met in 2014 at a Starbucks in New York for a cup of coffee. And we've been working together ever since. And he's my co-founder. We started working, to anyone who's looking at building that team, we started working as kind of on a project basis to get to know each other before we went in as full-time co-founders and partners. But we took some time to get to know each other. We really liked the way we worked together. We all had prior businesses. The timing wasn't right, but then we officially launched and came together full time in 2018. And when it comes to what you develop, no problem. Any startup, you got to watch your pennies. Every dollar counts. So you have to be careful in what you spend. And sometimes, onshore developers can be costly. Hiring team people, right, full time can be costly. So you do want to outsource and offshore some development. But what you give them, make sure it's not essential, integral, and confidential to the business, because that's where you start to lose control and you want to avoid any damage to your IP or your customers. So there are processes and procedures, and I'm happy to talk with any of you how to do that well, but make sure what you build and develop is what is important to your business. And then whatever is out there in open source, and there's a ton of it already out there, that you can use for the stuff that isn't as important to your business. And that's where it gets a little fun too in development.
When you
When you
outsourced, did you have to sign NDAs or make them sign NDAs?
So it depends. It depends on if you're outsourcing. I mean, all of our independent contractors and consultants sign NDAs. An NDA, look, the lawyer in me, and I can't be giving legal advice, but on a high level, NDAs are only so good as you can actually enforce them and spend the money to go and enforce somebody and show real damages. It's a little bit hard. It's hard in technology too, because so much is open source. You change one line of code and it's something different, right? So yeah, it's a little bit hard, but that's where it's good to have a lot of different people working on a lot of different pieces of the business, but only the co-founders have the view to the whole business, all of the customer database and all of the different pieces of technology. So, kind of like the same thing they do with the Coca-Cola method, right? It's a trade secret. It's not patented, and only one person in the world knows the whole recipe, and it's under lock and key. Everyone else only knows the pieces that they work on. And that's how they protect it, right? So a lot of things you can do to put in place some protection. But at the end of the day, if it's out there, just assume it's out there. Just don't ever show anyone your customer list. Don't give anyone all of your line of code. And you just be smart and trust your gut, and you'll do fine.
Thank you.
And with technology, the last piece is, if you're constantly iterating and adding features and tools and functionality, and you keep growing, then anyone who tries to copy you, they're still working on the version that's back here, and you're all the way over here. So don't stress.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Stephanie. I know you've been saying we a lot throughout this whole kind of conversation. So I was curious, kind of who are those people that have helped you to become successful, or who do you rely on to build your business?
I mean, we are so fortunate and blessed by the community that we've built. And talk about community first, because that has been integral to getting us to where I am. No big, massive, powerful organization is a one woman or one man or one person show, right? It is a team. And I truly mean that. My co-founder, we've been working together and looking at this since 2014, and we're still in it together and in it for the long run and want to take it public or get it acquired. That's it, right? And so, he's been front and center in our partnership and in how we think about things. We've built an incredible team, and each of the individual brings to the table something different. We've got an awesome group of investors, and we've been very careful about our investors. We've said no to money before. It's hard to say no to money, but these truly are like a relationship, a long-term relationship. So you want the right people on your cap table, or it can be very damaging for the business. So we found the right investors, right? And then the incredible kind of thought leaders and partnerships. Some of the best things we did as a startup is what a lot of people don't do. And that is talk about what we're doing and finding partners to support each other. And those kind of channel partners just bring you so much, marketing and storytelling and support and customer acquisition strategies that the network effects just start to take off if you're not afraid to partner and communicate with people about what you're doing. And so all of that has come together kind of, whether it's for-profit businesses, non-for-profits, startups we work with to the biggest companies in the world. And all of them are integral to getting where we are. Makes it a fun ride.
Yeah, that's great. So I think we're just about reaching the end, but I would love for you to kind of let us know where we can reach you, where we can find you. How can we learn more about Queen of Raw?
Yeah, I will close by saying I'm doing what I'm doing for my kids. You may hear screaming in the background in the snow, right? I want them to have clean water to drink, clothes that aren't toxic to her, and a planet to live on. And I'm not stopping till I do. That's what drives me every day. And, if you find in you, thank you, that kind of excitement and passion and what matters to you, then you will build a massively powerful and successful business for sure. If it speaks to your core, it speaks to your core. It drives you every day. I'm very public about my information. You're welcome to share it with everyone. You can link me in. You can contact me at stephanie@queenofraw.com. I put my cell phone on when I reply on emails, like no problem. This is all a part of building the network and the community. If there's a way I can help you, feel free to reach out. This is all a critical part of it. And thank you for having me. Go change the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephanie.
My pleasure.
So yeah, just a quick announcement for the members here. So we have another meeting tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific. We're going to have an innovation quest session. So that's our kind of pitch/business plan competition coming up soon, and followed by social hour. So yeah, I want to be
If you ever want
respectful
to
of
toss around that 60-second pitch, let me know. It's a fun exercise and you'll get it. It takes time, but you'll get it.
To find that pitch, what we just have
If you Google Queen of Raw, Ashton Kutcher, I'll put it in the Slack if you really
please
want
do.
it. Here, let me get it. It was a lot of fun. I'll put up the one. There's one version that's public and one version that they kept private. So let me see if I can find it. And hold on, it may start playing. Okay, here we go. I'll put it in here just so you got it. So there's one of it with Ashton. Yeah.
That's so sick.
Yeah, it was fun. And Ashton is a very, very, very good guy, very cool person. So yeah, like I said, helps to find good people who really care and are passionate like you are.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much again, Stephanie. We
you.
really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Bye.
Have a great
Thank you,
day.
Stephanie.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.